She passed a silent note to the Alpha King. Your fiancé betrayed you. They're ready. Torches burned along the high walls, their flames shaking in the cold wind like nervous hearts. Inside the grand hall, rulers of lands both mortal and supernatural gathered beneath a ceiling carved with moons, stars, and forgotten gods. Kings sat beside queens, lords beside beasts wearing human skin. Every smile hid a blade. Among them all, Alpha King Kalen Blackthorn stood apart. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black and steel. His crown was simple, dark metal shaped like clawed branches, but the power around him was impossible to ignore. The blood of wolves and kings ran together in his veins. When he walked, the room shifted. When he looked at someone, they felt seen down to the bone. Tonight, Kalen was meant to be celebrated. In 3 days, he would marry Lady Ceres Dawnville, daughter of the Sun Court. Their union promised peace between the Moonbound clans and the Southern Crowns. Songs were already being written. Treaties were signed in advance. The world believed the war was finally ending, but Kalen felt no peace. His instincts had been restless for days. The wolf inside him paced without rest, sensing something wrong beneath the music and laughter. He watched the crowd with sharp eyes, reading movements, breaths, silences. That was when he felt her. At the edge of the hall, near the long tables of scribes and servants, stood a young woman dressed in gray, plain, unnoticed. Her head was bowed as she arranged scrolls, her dark hair tied back simply. She should have meant nothing. Yet Kalen's attention pulled toward her as if by an unseen thread. Her name was Eloin Vale. No one important spoke her name anymore. Once she had been born to a minor noble house, gifted with rare magic, the ability to sense truth, to hear lies before they were spoken. Kings feared such gifts. Priests called it dangerous. Years ago, she had been cursed. Her voice was taken from her as punishment for speaking truth where silence was demanded. Since then, Eloin lived quietly, working as a scribe, watching history unfold while unable to warn anyone of what she saw coming. Tonight, her hands trembled. Eloin had seen the signs long before the conclave began. Secret meetings in hidden halls, symbols carved into candle wax, words exchanged in shadows. The pattern was clear to her, clear and terrifying. Betrayal. Her eyes lifted, searching the hall until they found him. The Alpha King. Their gazes met across the crowded room. Kalen felt it like a strike to the chest. Her eyes were dark, steady, and filled with something he did not expect: sorrow, not fear, not awe, sorrow as if she already mourned him. Music played louder, goblets clinked. Laughter echoed. Eloin knew this was her only chance. She moved carefully through the hall, keeping her head down, her steps slow. Servants passed her without notice. Guards ignored her plain clothes. The curse had made her invisible in ways beyond speech. Kalen watched her approach, every instinct alert. His guards shifted, hands near weapons, but he lifted one finger slightly. Let her come. When Eloin reached him, her heart felt as if it would tear itself free. She could not speak, could not cry out. All she had was one small piece of folded parchment hidden in her sleeve. She stopped beside him as if to adjust a fallen scroll. Then, with a movement so quiet it could have been mistaken for nothing at all, she slipped the note into his hand. Their fingers brushed. The world seemed to pause. Kalen looked down at his palm. 4 simple words stared back at him. Your fiancé betrayed you. They are ready. His jaw tightened. Slowly, he lifted his gaze to Eloin again. Her face was pale, her expression calm but full of weight, as if she had carried this truth alone for too long. She met his stare without flinching. No lie touched her eyes. No madness lived there. Only certainty. Kalen folded the note carefully and closed his hand around it. For a moment, neither moved. Then footsteps approached. Lady Ceres Dawnville stepped into the light. She was everything Eloin was not: golden-haired, radiant, dressed in silk the color of sunrise. Her smile warmed the room. Her presence drew admiration like fire draws moths. "My king," Sarah said softly, placing a hand on Kaelin's arm. "You look distant. Are you enjoying the celebration?" Kaelin studied her face, searching for cracks. He saw none, yet the wolf inside him growled low. "I was just reminded," he said carefully, "that not all gifts are wrapped in beauty." Sarah laughed lightly. "You always speak in riddles." Her eyes flicked briefly to Aloin, just briefly, but Aloin felt it, cold, sharp, knowing. Sarah turned back to Kaelin. "Who is this?" "A scribe," Kaelin replied. "How curious," Sarah said. "She looks tired." Aloin lowered her eyes, her hands clenched. Kaelin straightened. "Leave us," he said suddenly to everyone. The words cut through the hall like steel. Music faltered. Conversations died. Sarah blinked. "Kaelin," I said, "leave us." The Alpha King's voice carried command older than crowns. Guards moved at once, ushering guests away. Murmurs spread like ripples through water. Sarah hesitated, then smiled sweetly. "As you wish, my king." As she walked away, her fingers brushed his arm again. This time, Kaelin felt only cold. When the hall was nearly empty, he turned fully to Aloin. "Who are you?" he asked. She reached for a quill and parchment from the nearby table. Her hand shook, but her writing was clear. "Aloin Vale, I serve truth, even when it costs me." "Why warn me?" he pressed. She wrote again, "Because if I do not, you will fall, and the realm will burn." The words hit harder than any blade. Kaelin studied her for a long moment, then he turned to his guards. "Take her," he ordered. Aloin's breath caught. "Not to the cells. To my chambers." Gasps echoed faintly from beyond the doors. Aloin was escorted through long corridors of stone and moonlight, her thoughts racing. Fear twisted inside her, but beneath it was something else, relief. She had been heard. Kaelin followed behind, silent, his expression unreadable. Inside his chambers, the doors closed with a heavy sound. The Alpha King turned to face her fully. "Understand this," he said. "If you lie, you die. If you speak truth, you may still die." Aloin met his gaze. She placed a hand over her heart and bowed her head, not in submission but in promise. Outside, unseen by either of them, a figure watched from the shadows. Lady Sarah smiled. The game had begun. Tall windows opened to the night sky, where the moon hung full and watchful. Wolf symbols were carved into the walls, their eyes seeming almost alive in the silver light. A fire burned low in the hearth, not for warmth but for tradition. This room had seen oaths sworn, enemies broken, and kings reborn. Aloin stood near the center, her hands folded before her. She felt small here, not weak but exposed. Kaelin Blackthorn did not sit. He paced slowly like a predator measuring distance, every step quiet but heavy with power. His presence filled the room. Even without anger, he was dangerous. Even without speaking, he commanded. "You understand what you have done," he said at last. Aloin nodded. "You have accused my future queen of betrayal." She nodded again. "You have done this without voice, without proof that the court can see." Her fingers tightened together. Kaelin stopped in front of her. "Why should I believe you?" Aloin took a breath. She moved to the table and picked up parchment and ink. Her writing was careful, slow, as if each word carried weight beyond itself. "Because I have nothing to gain and everything to lose." Kaelin read the words. His jaw tightened. "People lie for less," he said. Aloin met his eyes and wrote again. "I was cursed for speaking truth. I would not risk that pain again unless the truth was worth it." The fire cracked softly. Kaelin studied her face, searching for fear, madness, ambition. He found none, only exhaustion. "How do you know?" he asked quietly. Aloin hesitated. This truth was dangerous, she wrote. "I see patterns others ignore. I feel lies the way others feel cold. Lady Saris meets in secret. She uses symbols older than your crown. She is not alone." Kaelin felt the wolf inside him stir. "Who else?" he demanded. Aloin shook her head slowly. "Not yet, but soon." Silence filled the chamber. Outside, the wind howled against stone. Kaelin turned away, gripping the edge of the table. Every instinct screamed conflict. Saris had stood beside him for months, gentle, loyal, perfect in the eyes of the court. To doubt her was to risk war, shame, chaos. And yet, he had learned long ago that the most dangerous threats wore the kindest faces. "You will remain here," he said at last. "Under my protection." Aloan looked up sharply. "Until I decide what truth you carry," he continued. "You will not leave these walls," she nodded. It was more mercy than she expected. Days passed, slow and heavy. Word spread through the court like mist, whispers of the silent scribe taken by the Alpha King himself. Some said she was a spy, others said a witch. A few claimed she was already condemned. Saris visited often. Each time her smile was gentle. Each time her eyes searched the shadows. "She seems fragile," Saris said one afternoon as she walked beside Kaelin in the garden of frost roses. "Are you certain keeping her close is wise?" Kaelin watched the frozen petals fall. "Truth is often fragile." Saris laughed softly. "So is glass, and it cuts." Her words lingered. Inside the chambers, Aloan listened to the walls. The curse that silenced her had sharpened her other senses. She felt the magic woven into the stones, felt the pull of the moon on Kaelin's blood. At night when the halls slept, she dreamed of wolves running beneath burning skies, dreams that were not hers. One evening she woke with a sharp gasp. Kaelin stood near the window, shirt undone, his back marked with old scars. "You see them too," he said without turning. Aloan froze. "You dream of fire and chains," he continued, "of a beast kneeling." She swallowed and nodded. Kaelin turned, his eyes glowing faintly silver. "Those are my dreams." A bond was forming. Neither of them named it. They spoke less with words and more with presence. Aloan wrote what she could. Kaelin listened more than he spoke. Slowly, trust, thin and fragile, began to grow. One night, Aloan discovered something she had feared. While sorting old records, her fingers brushed a hidden symbol carved beneath the desk. Her breath caught. It was the same mark she had seen on Saris's rings, a sigil of binding, older than kings. Aloan's heart raced. She grabbed parchment and ran barefoot through stone halls to Kaelin's chambers. Guards reached for weapons, but Kaelin raised his hand. Aloan placed the parchment before him. "The ritual has begun. The marriage is the final seal." Kaelin felt the ground shift beneath him. "Binding me?" he whispered. Aloan nodded. "Not just you, the beast, the crown, your will." For the first time, fear crossed the Alpha King's face. "If she succeeds," he began, "you will rule," Aloan wrote, "but never choose. You will be king in name only." Silence followed. Then Kaelin laughed short, bitter. "All my life," he said, "I fought to rule myself." He looked at Aloan. "And you?" he asked quietly. "Why do you still stand with me?" Her hand shook as she wrote. "Because you listen." The words struck deeper than any accusation. Kaelin stepped closer. "Do you know what it means," he asked, "to stand against a queen?" Aloan lifted her chin. "I stood against gods once." Something in his expression changed. Respect. Before either could speak again, the chamber doors opened. Saris entered. "I feared I might find secrets here," she said lightly. Her eyes fell on the parchment. On the sigil Aloan had drawn. For a moment the mask slipped, just for a moment, then Saris smiled. "My king," she said softly, "you should not trust cursed girls." Aloan met her gaze, and in that instant she knew. The betrayal was deeper than she feared. Much deeper. Its red light spilled across towers, banners, and stone streets like a warning written across the sky. People gathered in the great square below the palace, their voices low and unsure. The wedding of the Alpha King was meant to be a celebration of peace, yet the air felt heavy, charged with unseen danger. Inside the palace, preparations moved forward without pause. Silk curtains were hung. Sacred flames were lit. The ancient altar of union was cleaned and polished, ready to bind two lives into one fate. Priests murmured prayers older than memory. Everything was ready. Everything was wrong. Kaelin Blackthorn stood alone in his chamber, staring at his reflection in dark glass. He wore ceremonial armor, black steel etched with moon symbols. It felt heavier than any armor he had worn in battle. The wolf inside him paced wildly. He had not slept. Truth pressed against his chest like a blade. Across the hall, behind guarded doors, Elowen sat on the stone floor, her back against the wall. The council had decided she was a threat, not condemned, yet but removed for the safety of the realm. Kalen had not fought the order, not openly. He had learned patience in war. Elowen closed her eyes and breathed slowly. The curse inside her stirred, sensing the blood moon. Magic hummed through the walls, thick and dangerous. She felt the ritual moving like a giant heart beginning to beat. Time was running out. She touched the floor and felt it, symbols carved beneath the stone spreading through the palace, binding marks, chains not of metal but of will. They were meant for Kaelin. The guards outside her door shifted, uneasy. Even they could feel it. Elowen stood. She had one choice left, and it would cost her everything. The ceremony began at dusk. Kaelin walked into the grand hall alone, his steps slow and measured. The court rose as one. Music filled the space, deep and echoing. The blood moon's light poured through the high windows, painting everything red. Saris Dawnville entered moments later. She looked radiant. Gold and crimson silk flowed around her like fire. A crown of light rested on her head. The court sighed in admiration. Even now she played her role perfectly. She met Kaelin's eyes and smiled. He did not smile back. The priests called for silence. "Tonight," one began, "we bind crown to crown, blood to blood." The floor trembled, just slightly. Kaelin felt it. The wolf growled. Saris's fingers tightened around her ceremonial ring. Far above, clouds moved across the moon, darkening its light. "Elowen," Kaelin whispered under his breath. As if summoned by his voice, a shout echoed from the back of the hall. "Stop!" All heads turned. Elowen stood at the entrance, guarded no longer. Her hair was loose, her face pale but steady. Gasps filled the hall. "How did she?" someone whispered. Before anyone could stop her, Elowen walked forward. Each step burned. The curse inside her pulled tight, warning her of the cost. She reached the altar. The priests froze. Saris's smile did not falter, but her eyes hardened. "This is inappropriate," Saris said calmly. "Remove her." Elowen shook her head. She opened her mouth. Pain tore through her like fire. For years, silence had wrapped her voice like chains. To break it meant breaking herself. But truth demanded sound. Her voice rose, raw, cracked, real. "Do not bind him," Elowen said. The sound echoed through the hall. Shock rippled outward. Kaelin stared at her, heart hammering. Saris stepped back. "She is cursed," she said sharply. "Do not listen." "She binds you," Elowen continued, blood trickling from the corner of her mouth. "The marriage is a cage. The ritual steals your will." The symbols flared beneath the altar. The room darkened. Saris laughed softly. "So you see at last," she said. Her calm mask fell away. "This realm needs a king who obeys," Saris continued. "Not a beast who chooses." The sigils ignited. Chains of red light surged from the floor, wrapping around Kaelin's arms, his chest, his throat. The wolf roared inside him, slamming against invisible walls. Kaelin cried out, not in pain but in fury. Elowen screamed. "No." She ran to him, placing her hands on the glowing chains. Magic burned her skin, but she did not pull away. "I choose," she said hoarsely. "I choose truth." The curse shattered. Light burst from her chest, bright and blinding. The chains cracked, the altar split. Saris shouted in anger as the binding faltered. Kaelin fell to his knees, free but shaken. The court erupted into chaos. Guards drew weapons. Nobles fled. The priests scattered. Saris stepped back, her voice rising in fury. "If I cannot rule through you," she hissed, "I will rule through ruin." Dark power surged toward Elowen. Kaelin reached for her too late. The magic struck. Elowen collapsed. The light faded. Silence fell. Kaelin crawled to her side, lifting her into his arms. She was cold. "Too still." "Elowen," he whispered, "stay with me." Her eyes fluttered open briefly. She smiled, a small, peaceful smile, then they closed. The blood moon burned overhead. Dawn came slowly. The hall lay in ruins. Saris was gone, the court was broken, the alliance shattered. Kalen sat where he had fallen, Aloin cradled against his chest. He did not move. He did not speak. The wolf inside him howled in grief. Morning light touched the broken hall softly, as if afraid to wake what remained. Shattered stone lay across the floor. Burned symbols faded slowly, their power spent. The great altar stood cracked and empty, its purpose undone. Kalen Blackthorn still sat on the cold stone. Eloin lay in his arms. Her face was calm, almost peaceful, as if she slept after a long journey. Her dark hair spread across his armor, her hands resting lightly against his chest. There was no warmth left in her fingers. The Alpha King did not move. No one dared speak. Guards stood in silence. Lords and nobles watched from a distance, unsure, afraid. The kingdom waited. At last Kalen lifted his head. His eyes were no longer silver. They were dark, deep, and full of grief. "She saved you all," he said quietly. No one answered. "She broke a curse meant to rule this land," he continued. "And you watched." Shame spread through the hall like shadow. Kalen rose slowly, lifting Aloin with him. The weight of her felt heavier than any crown. "Clear the palace," he ordered. "Leave us." No one questioned him. By nightfall, the halls stood empty. Days passed. The kingdom held its breath. Kalen refused the council, refused the throne, refused food and rest. He carried Aloin to the highest tower, where moonlight touched stone and old magic whispered through the walls. He laid her on a bed of white linen and candles. "If the gods hear truth," he said softly, "then hear this." He knelt beside her. "I was raised to rule," he said, "to command, to conquer." His voice broke. "But she taught me to listen." The moonlight shifted. The air grew still. Magic stirred, not violent, not sharp, but deep and ancient like roots beneath the earth. A voice spoke, not aloud, within the silence. "Truth does not die," it said, "it changes." Kalen felt warmth move through his chest. Aloin's fingers twitched, he froze. "Aloin," he whispered. Her breath came shallow, fragile but real. She lived. Aloin awoke between worlds. She stood in a quiet place where light had no source and shadows had no shape. Her voice was gone again, but she did not feel afraid. Before her stood an ancient presence, not cruel, not kind. "You broke the chain," it said, "but every breaking has a price." Aloin bowed her head. "I accept it," she answered without sound. "You may return," the presence continued, "but not as you were." Images filled her mind, her old life, her lost voice, her quiet strength. "Choose," the presence said, "a full life without magic or a bound fate with the Alpha King." Aloin did not hesitate. She stepped forward. When Aloin opened her eyes again, the world felt different, not weaker, clearer. Kalen sat beside her, his face lined with exhaustion and hope. She reached for his hand. He inhaled sharply. "You came back," he said. She smiled softly. Her voice did not return, but she did not need it. The court gathered again weeks later, not for celebration, for judgment. Kalen stood before them without armor, without crown. "Aloin Vale speaks for truth," he said. "I speak for the crown." He told them everything, the ritual, the binding, the betrayal. Names were spoken, proof revealed. Those who had conspired were removed from power, not by force but by law. The kingdom listened. For the first time, the Alpha King did not rule by fear. He ruled by honesty. Then he turned to Aloin. "This realm demands a queen," he said. "Not for beauty, not for blood." He knelt for balance. The court gasped. Aloin stepped forward. She placed her hand over his heart. Once she had been silenced. Now she was seen. The crown was placed upon her head, not heavy, not sharp, but simple and strong. She did not speak. Her presence was enough. Under the full moon, the kingdom changed. Laws were rewritten. Power was shared. Truth was no longer punished with silence. Kalen ruled as Alpha King. Aloin ruled as Queen of Quiet Strength. Together they were not bound. They chose. And far beyond the palace walls, something ancient stirred, watching, waiting. Because love, once awakened, is the most powerful magic of all.